Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to our AFD Tech Talks, which this will be the first talk for the year. Today's talk will be on emerging technologies' impact on the future of democracy. We'll be looking at trends and some of the consequences on that. The objective behind the Tech Talks is to find ways in which we can advance the responsible adoption of technologies and use and design of technologies for sustainable development, looking at the value propositions and also the negative impacts and ways in which public development banks or development finance institutions can play a role in moving forward in this direction. To start with, I'd like to thank the speaker and you for joining us this afternoon. I hope you've all eaten well if you are in this part of the calendar time. Uh, Thank you so much for making time to join us for this particular conversation. And as I talked about, this talk will be looking at the impacts of emerging technologies on the future of democracy, the trends and the consequences, and we'll like to learn from some of the experiences on these particular topics. So a few housekeeping as we start. There'll be a question tab. Feel free to drop in all your questions on the Q&A on Livestorm. So it is on your right corner. So you can use that to throw in your questions, and obviously the chat. It would be great to know who is joining, and so you can drop in hello, hi, I'm from this organization, just to know you are also here. And then feel free to drop in questions. At the end of the presentations, we will have quite ample time for open questions. So we'll have more time so that we have a longer conversation, right? So just a quick run through of the today's event. So I'll just introduce the speaker, and after that, the speaker will have about close to 30 minutes maximum on this particular topic, and then we will have a series of questions to steer up the conversations, and obviously a lot of questions coming from you so that it will be much more an engagement with all the participants and experts that are joining this particular event. And then we'll end it with some final reflections and also announce the next Tech Talk to come in February. Our speaker is called Jorge Clarke, and he's a mathematician. He works on innovation. He's done quite a lot of things. He's keen on the area of AI. He's a strategic advisor. I've had the privilege to work with him. He has also he's currently also working with the International Research Center on Artificial Intelligence under UNESCO. He has worked on several innovations lab in the global south, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and other locations. So he's originally from, I guess, Chile. And in mathematics, he has a lot of stuffs in that. And he's been working on the area of emerging technologies in the area of democracy, the future of democracy, and would like him to share some of the insights that we have had so far on the trends and the consequences. So I will, before I pass the conversation to Jorge to start his talk, I would like to announce that we have a poll that has been launched. So on your right corner, you have polls. I invite all of you to quickly vote. There are just two questions. It will just take you almost 2 or 3 seconds to answer the polls. And at the end of the event, we will know your thoughts on that, right? We'll know the percentages from this particular poll. So I invite all of you to click on the poll session and then vote. So thanks a lot. I'll pass it over to Jorge to present his insights on this particular topic. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. The first thing that I would like to ask you is if you can hear me properly. So maybe you can answer me in the chat. Do you hear me properly? Is that anybody has a good sound reception?
Yeah, I guess you can hear you clearly.
Yes, great. So, what do I have access to the slides? I don't see the slides.
So our moderator will be putting on the slides. It's live, it's online. Yes, over to you.
Great. So shall I just click here and they move? Perfect. Well, so let me tell you a little bit how this is going to be unfolded. I like that. First of all, je voulais m'excuser. J'ai regardé parmi les questions, il y a quelqu'un qui a demandé la traduction en français de la présentation. Je suis désolé. I'm sorry to tell you that for democratic issues, we have the impression that there is more Anglophone speakers than Francophone speakers, or better to say, more people that or less people that do not understand the English than people that do not understand French. So we decided to go in English. So I'm sorry for the.
But if you have questions in French, feel free to ask them in French, and then we will take it up also.
We take this question from Troy Fury. So that's on one. I would like to tell you in this story of the impacts of emerging technologies in democracy, first from a global perspective. And in this global perspective, I would like you to answer the poll. We have launched a poll since the very starting of the discussion. So we would like to have your participation. So please go into the poll and answer these two questions. At the end of the presentation, we are going to discuss the results. So what is the idea? The idea is that we are going to enter in this talk, discussing a little bit the global trends, and then we are going to flow in a very particular case, so we can get more familiar with the impacts of emerging technologies in democracy. Once we go to this particular case, we will coming back to the global perspective, and we will be starting to capture some insights. Then we will go in like global recommendations. We will also expand the use of technologies for democracy, discussing a little bit the risk and opportunities associated to it. Then I would like to take you a little bit to step in the future to what this might be within, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. And then we will end the discussion within 25 minutes or 30 minutes. The presentation will end. So along all this presentation, we will be putting to the table elements for discussion, questions that we would like to have with you later at the end of the presentation. So we will have enough time for discussing, at least 20 minutes or maybe even more. So please, if you came along the presentation with some questions, write it down or put it in the chat, and we will try to select. Maybe we will have time to answer all the questions or discuss the questions, because this is also an opportunity for me to learn from you. And well, let's go straight to the point. I hope that all of you already answered the poll. And observation on a state of global democracy. Well, the picture you are seeing is the main results from an annual survey, which is considered or which is carried on by the Economist Intelligence. The Economist Intelligence is a sister company from The Economist. So what I want to point here is that the main results say or indicate that more than a third of the world's population live under authoritarian rule, while just 6.4% enjoy a full democracy. If you see on the screen, you will see countries that are in dark red, which are the one under authoritarian regimes, according to the Intelligence Economist. This is just an opinion. Keep this in mind. And the countries in dark blue are the countries who live in a full democracy. So this is the result from this survey, which consider the analysis of the democracy in more than 167 countries on the basis of 5 measurements, which are electoral process and pluralism, the functioning of the government, political participation, democratic political culture, and civil liberties. Well, this is one opinion. We would like to know your opinion. This is about democracy. Now, what's happened with emerging technologies? A recent scientific publication exposed in Nature Human Behavior, where the authors carried a systematic analysis of the relation between the use of digital media and democracy. And this analysis comprises causal and correlation relation. So the authors, among different results, claim that the use of digital media is associated with eroding the glue that keeps democracies together, which is trust in political institutions. They also claim that digital media use is associated with increase in hate, populism, and polarization. And they also claim that there is clear evidence of serious threats to democracy. So this publication from November 2022, which is quite recent, is the first large analysis. They considered about 500 different publications and tried to analyze causal and correlation between the use of digital platforms and democracy. The point is that you might say, well, this is about digital media, just digital platforms. But behind digital platforms are many representations of emerging technologies. You have immediately your smartphones, your tablets, your laptops. Maybe you use, your car that is connected. So the correlation between digital media and emerging technologies is quite strong. And we have now on the table emerging technologies, digital media, and democracy. So we now see, according to scientists, that there is this causal and correlational relation. But all this needs one key element to have the impact emerging technologies are already having in democracy. And this key element is us, human beings, and our bias, our cognitive bias. So the picture that you are now watching is the cognitive bias codex. This is a mind map of human cognitive bias, our flaws. To go quick here, because if not, we are going to be lost maybe. A cognitive bias is a systematic pattern of deviation from rationality in judgment. Cognitive bias may sometimes lead to perceptual distortion, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, or what is broadly called irrationality. So yes, I am here also to tell you that we are a little bit irrational, and we humans have by nature irrational behaviors, which is part of our biology. We are equipped with this bit of irrationality. We are just human, we are full of flaws. And we need to put this into the table when we are planning actions that will impact lots of people. I know during the last century, we have been convinced that we human beings, we were rational entities. All this story about the Homo economicus. But the fact is that we are far from being rational. Human beings are more like an emotional and sensitive entity with the capacity for reasoning. However, no one guarantees that we are currently using this capacity for reasoning or that we are using this capacity regularly enough. So all these flaws is part of our nature, but this is going to be too complex if we stay there. So we are going to focus just on two cognitive biases. The first one is called anchoring. Anchoring is the idea that the first fact, number, or figure a person hears will bias their judgment and decisions down the line. Anchoring is what I am using right now with you. This will sound like a joke, but it's true. The first slide was about this report from The Economist about the decline in democracy. Then the following one was about this result from scientists that put on the table this correlational and causal relation between democracy and the use of digital platforms. So this is already in your brains, thanks to our human bias. The second human bias that I want to use is identifiable victim effect. This is the idea that one identifiable individual who is described in great detail evokes deeper emotions and sympathy than does a large group of anonymous individuals. We saw, or I told you, that this report from the Economist Intelligence is based on a survey over 167 countries. We could keep the discussion on the 167 countries, but this will be less engaging and impactful than if we choose one specific victim and follow this story. And timely, we have one victim from the negative impacts of emerging technologies in democracy, and maybe you are quite aware of this. It has been a lot of discussion recently, which is Brazil. Well, Brazil has a long story of fake news, hate discussion, disinformation, propaganda, with very huge impact also. Some people claim that the 2018 election of Jair Bolsonaro was thanks to fake news campaigns. It's hard to prove this, but a lot of people say this might be the case, as you can see on just a couple of news that I pick. But this keep on following in 2022. And in the last election, this was so intense. Brazil election was so drowned in disinformation that the Supreme Court of Brazil on October 20, right before the second round, passed a resolution giving the country's electoral court the power to order the removal of electoral-related news that has been proven to be fake from social media platform within a 2-hour window, with the threat that if this social media platform don't remove this fake news, they will pass. They will have an amount. They will have to pay some penalties. So it happened that this wave of misinformation was coming from both sides, from Jair Bolsonaro side and from Lula da Silva side. So this is completely transforming the way we run elections and the way we understand democratic processes. Points. Big techs don't seem to react as we would expect about the fake news phenomena, disinformation, and propaganda campaign. Yes, this might be due to a lack of local intelligence, because if you want to understand how disinformation impacts democracy in a particular country, in this case Brazil, you need also to understand how the people in this particular country behave. in this case, how Brazilians behave. So you need, if you want to build measures for this, you need to co-construct, you need the local intelligence. And in this case, we start to have this mixture of emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, data science, demographics, psychographic, geospatial data, Internet of Things, through your laptop, mobile phone, your tablet, so on and so on. And all this was used to impact the democracy. And the point is that the only victim is not Brazil, because according to scientists, last Brazilian ruler, Jair Bolsonaro, was also responsible, or his government was also responsible for a huge deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon. Again, an article published in Nature states that deforestation in Brazilian Amazon reached its highest level since 2008. And we know that this impacts not only Brazil. We are in an interconnected world with facing climate change, and we know how this has increasing impact in the whole world.
Okay.
Another point, which is for me even more concerning, is that the Amazon, according to scientists, another publication in Nature, is about to reach a tipping point where it will stop being a bio environment who captures CO2 emissions to transform in an ecosystem that produces CO2 emissions. So if Amazon reaches this tipping point, is going to be critical, because the main source of capturing CO2 emissions in the world is going to be transformed in a source that produces CO2 emissions. So this victim of democracy is not just victim of emerging technologies on democracy, but this also have an impact in environment and climate change. And this is affecting all of us. But let's start moving to the global perspective, not moving away from just the story from Brazil. Some lessons learned from researchers after the 2018 campaign in Brazil is they were wondering how we can fight misinformation. And they realized that while debunking every lie in WhatsApp, for example, is impossible, producing native content and presenting this in a funny way, in the same way fake news are presented, was much more effective in reducing the negative impact of misinformation and fake news. And why I'm mentioning here Taiwan? Well, the point is that the Minister of Digital in Taiwan has an army of about 100 designers who are constantly looking to design new means to counterattack fake news and misinformation campaigns. And this has been quite effective, even involving the Prime Minister of Taiwan. So we have a new perspective here that is telling that we need to put on the table human-centered design, user-centered design, to understand how can we fact-check in a more effective way. Because classic fact-check has been proved to be almost useless. But now, as we are entering to the global idea, I wanted to show you what is psychographics. And maybe some of you knows about the ocean model. Well, the ocean model is what is behind the Cambridge Analytica scandal. In this picture that you are seeing there is a presentation by who was the former CEO of Cambridge Analytica, Mr. Alexander Nix. In this presentation, Mr. Nix is talking about the ocean model. He was super proud of this. And he's explaining to his audience how you can use the ocean model to target population and send the message you want, especially tailored to your personality, to your values. And this is something that we can develop more in this slide. This slide is part of another company, which is called ADDO Big Data. But keep on the back of your mind the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Let me give you some figures about it and how the ocean model was used. Well, Cambridge Analytica, or his mother company, which is called SCL or SCL election, was involved in 44 U.S. congressional, U.S. Senate, and state-level elections, and more than 100 election campaigns in over 30 countries. Among those countries, you count Australia, Brazil, Czech Republic, France, where we are now, Gambia, Germany, Ghana, Guyana, India, Indonesia, Italy, Kenya, and so on and so on. The point is that the use of this model, which put on the table the concept of psychographics, is data about your personality, is data about your behavior, data about your psychological traits. Take this machinery of artificial intelligence, data science, behavioral science, and cognitive science to a next level and to use it for political purposes. The image that you are seeing there is a little bit the description of the ocean model: openness, consensuousness, extroversion, agreeableness, need for stability. Each one of these characteristics describe a little bit of you, and your personality is described as a combination of these 5 characteristics. The problem now is that this information is not only used by ADDO Big Data, which is a company based in Brazil, who claims political campaigns and public communication. They use this technology. It was used by SCL Group, by Cambridge Analytica, but today, this is a whole industry. And we move now to the insights of this story about Brazil, this story of a particular use of emerging technologies impacting democracy. There is a whole industry behind this now. Industry of datafication of politics and behavioral change. And this industry makes a lot of money. So, what can we capture now as insights? We have the crossings of artificial intelligence, behavioral science, data science, emerging technologies in general, neuroscience, and lots of data. Classic data like demographics and geospatial data, but on top of this, we have psychographics from the ocean model, and I think that today the ocean model is to a next level because the information I'm showing to you is from at least 5 years ago. All these have radically changed democracy. We have transformed this in a 30, 60 day, a year campaign cycle. And we have this whole industry who is participating on this. So we have loopholes on the table because who is really financing a digital campaign? Who is regulating this digital campaign? We don't know. Then something that I would like to start putting on the table for later discussion with you, with the audience, is the concept of the 5th factor of production. So, from classic economics, the factor of production are the inputs needed for creating a good or a service, which are, in classic economics, just 4: land, labor, entrepreneurship, and capital. Today, economists as Shoshana Zuboff, emeritus professor at Harvard Business School, she claimed, with other colleagues, other researchers, that data is today the 5th factor of production, because data, digitalized data, is in fact an input that could be used, and it is used to create goods and services. Then, let me tell you a little story. Discussing with my students here at Sciences Po this year, we were talking about this, the impacts of emerging technologies in democracy. And we were talking about behavioral science and how this is impacting society. And one of my students told me, but Jorge, you know what? At the end of the day, what companies are looking is to make profits. Yes, that's right. Basically, most of the companies, maybe all, the leitmotif is to make profits, earnings, to reinvest, to grow, whatever. The point is that this is why I call this the end justify the means. Looking for profits, it seems that misinformation is very lucrative. So if Google Ads are more effective in a portal of misinformation, so be it. No one is controlling that. And if in this way the Google Ads are making more profit, they will keep doing it. So that's for the insight of the story. Now let's keep going global. Let's go back to the bigger picture of emerging technologies and democracy and think about opportunities and risk. Let me give you a couple of examples. Online voting systems. This could allow individuals to cast their votes electronically. It's a nice idea. It's a good idea, in fact. Ease the participation in democratic processes. This is already being used in Estonia and Switzerland. It's quite useful when physically access polling station is difficult. So those are positive aspects. On the concerns, on the risk, there are concerns about the security and reliability of these systems. Something not exactly online voting system, but something related with electronic identification for elections created a lot of noise in Kenya. And there is also the risk of hackers to manipulate the results. Another example, collaborative decision-making tools. It will allow groups to work together to make decisions. It is useful for facilitating democratic dialogue in situations where it is not possible for everyone to meet in person. It could also encourage or foster the relation between the government and civil society organizations. On the risk sides, these tools may be biased or manipulated, leading to inaccurate or unfair results. And you have many other examples. You can use blockchain to traceability and transparency in election. Decentralized identities, again, blockchain. Each individual owns his data. Civic techs to increase civil society participation. On the good side, for example. On the negative side, you have drones and Internet of Things used for surveillance, something that we know is happening in China, for example. So we have the good sides and downsides. In general, emerging technologies and democracy, they could facilitate democratic processes, increase civil society participation and engagement, improve access to information and government services, data-driven procedures to inform policy decisions. So we not only trust in the expert, but also a decision who is based on data. Enhanced collaboration and communication among civil society and governments. Risk, as we already saw it, the spread of misinformation and propaganda, socio-political polarization, the risk of cyber attacks on democratic institutions, the use of technology to monitor and control citizens, again, and an increasing digital divide, and the use of technologies, this divide, to perpetuate other inequalities. This divide is strongly related also and has a strong impact with the access to information that governments want to provide to the society. We are already perceiving this in many, many different countries. So what can we consider as a global recommendations? Well, we need capacity building at any level, at all the levels, for the civil society, but also for civil servants. The next Tech Talk, within 2 weeks, don't lose it, same day, same time. It's going to be about artificial intelligence and digital transformation competency framework for civil servants.
Oh, look at that, yeah.
A project from UNESCO. This is capacity building about a particular situation of the impacts of emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, in democracy. Rethink and co-construct democracy. To my understanding, the effects of digital platforms and digital transformation on democracy has taken this to a next level. Propaganda, misinformation is as old as human. This is part of us. But today, the impact of this has reached a new level. Is specifically targeted and has massive effect. So we need to rethink and co-construct democracy, something that is being done, for example, by en français, la Fondation de l'Innovation pour la Démocratie, the Foundation for Innovation on Democracy. Raise awareness and mobilize actors for knowledge and experience sharing, what we are doing now, what the AFD, Emerging Technologies Lab, Innovations, and ESR are trying to do. Fostering digital commons and open source. This is super interesting and super useful. Give access to data. Give access to people to be aware of what is going on there. Super nice example about tax collection. My personal opinion, tax collection is a representation of democracy. If you can collect all the tax that everybody needs to pay, obviously. And this is a project carried on in Senegal, digitalization of property taxation, and it's built on open source. So this gives you immediately traceability and accountability. If you want to know what is happening in this tool, you can go there. It's open source. Similarly, give access to people. The Geospatial Innovation Hub, an example, in Senegal again. Foster initiative in digital education, inclusion, and literacy, another recommendation. An example, the digital literacy and capacity development in Nigeria. Finally, and which is super important, keep fostering a positive digital and tech regulation. This is something where the European Union is on top of it. It's at the head. The GDPR, the Digital Services Act, the Digital Platform Act is DPA there. I made a mistake in the presentation. I'm sorry. And the Artificial Intelligence Act. This type of regulation, we need it on the table. We need to build this type of regulation everywhere. And that's not the... Okay, this is the correct recommendation for public development banks. Well, the immediate one, funding. Well, that's why it's a bank. Funding initiatives that promote the responsible use of technology, especially in democratic process. Provide technical assistance, so supporting governments in the implementation of capacity building, for example, and also in the implementation of the use of technology in a way that promotes democracy. So technology for good, technology for democracy. This is an initiative. I will talk about it later. Policy support, regulation, like the GDPR. We were just discussing about it. How public development banks could support the building of these regulatory frameworks. Partnership. A good example, if you can keep it in your mind, is Tech for Democracy, an initiative from the Danish government. Get together, public development banks, multilateral and bilateral institutions, other governments, to create an environment that put on the table the responsible use of technologies to foster democracy, to enhance democracy, and to recover democracy for those who believe that democracy has been harmed lately. And support for marginalized communities. This is strongly related with digital literacy. Digital literacy. Beyond digital education and inclusion, we need digital literacy. It's like a new alphabetization. Advocacy. Advocacy is very special. Here I come back with this idea of the means that have been built in Taiwan to fight disinformation. They are fighting disinformation with humor, and maybe just saying in the formal classic way that we are presenting, I don't know, a fact check, or we are fighting disinformation is not enough. We need to think differently, and we need to pass the message in a different way. This is where human-centered design and user design is on the table. So 1 minute to take you to the future. And I think maybe a lot of you are already playing with ChatGPT. So let me ask you a question. I know because I read all the details of the license agreements of ChatGPT-3 and GPT-3, because I used to work with GPT-3 like in 2021. All the information you are putting on this platform is for OpenAI. They can use anything that you put there to whatever purpose they want. This is on the license. Who is regulating that? Next, imagine we are in 2030. Schools is incredible because in the metaverse, students will learn with immersion. So they learn biology by playing with the human body in virtual reality. Sounds great, but imagine this situation. You have 300 million kids, maybe more, maybe 1,000 million kids, using the virtual reality lens of Meta in a school to learn 1 hour a day. Great. But this machine are capturing biometric data, biometric information of, for example, 300 million kids. This could be a scenario in the future. Who is going to take care of this? Who is going to regulate the use of this biometric data? And how this and the potential misuse of this information would impact society? Maybe we can discuss that now, because I think we are almost at the end of the presentation, and I want to capture you in a reflection of more than 4,000 years, from the old philosopher Lao Tse in China to the contemporary scientists and maybe philosopher also, Sam Harris. Duality. Sociopolitical polarization is strongly rooted in our voting system. A potential remedy for sociopolitical polarization, my personal opinion, may lie outside the technological box. We need to rethink democracy and question the classic voting systems to allow alternative voting systems that break this polarity, that break this duality. But this is going to be in the third Tech Talk within 4 weeks. Hope to see you there, as well as within 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Please, let's go to the discussion.
Good. Thanks, Jorge, for making time for this particular talk and letting us know a bit about the positive value propositions of emerging technologies, citing examples in Brazil and how it's even impacting green transitions in these particular locations, talking about issues around online voting, cyber attacks as parts of the negative impacts, obviously, of the irresponsible use of technologies. I recall you also talk about the technology being used to monitor and also control citizens. I think you cited a bit about misinformation and disinformation, but not so much. So what runs in my mind is, given the pandemic of disinformation, obviously arising from advances in technology, right? What can be done about it? Like, and what role do public development banks or these development finance institutions like AFD can do to be able to handle that. And we know that this information spreads up around 6 times faster than true information, right? So, and we know, obviously, they've been raising concerns now about things around anti-français, even in some parts of the African continent, in line with disinformation, misinformation, and there's a challenge, right? So, what can be done about this, and what can we do as development institutions in a quest to build a much more cleaner use and responsible use of technology? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And then I'll invite participants to feel free to drop in questions, and then we will continue the conversation.
Well, to take your question like quickly, I think that maybe people will think this is an exaggeration, but I like to put on the table a metaphor. And for me, this mixture of artificial intelligence, data science, behavioral science, cognitive science, psychology, with these massive amounts of data, which is proper of the 21st century. We didn't have this amount of data before. And it's increasing in exponential way in terms of geospatial data, demographics, psychographics, and so on and so on. All the information I can capture with your mobile phone, for example, has created a tool that has impact to the next level. And the comparison, the metaphor for me, is nuclear energy. The war and violence is part of human being. And during the whole history, we have used guns and going to work in different places. As we don't like it, although we don't like it, is true. It's a characteristic of the human being.
Okay.
And nuclear energy, in the form of the nuclear bomb in the Second World War, showed the world that, okay, we are now talking in a different level. We're going to, it's just a different state of playing. The impact of this level of these guns is in another level. It's massive in comparison to the previous guns. And for me, propaganda, misinformation is also like guns and violence is all as human. But now, this mixture that I mentioned has taken propaganda, misinformation to the next level. So in the same way we treat nuclear energy with a lot of attention, and we managed to handle this after 2 bombs, then we decided all the world put an agreement together to say, okay, guys, we need to stop this because this could destroy the world. I think that we need to have an agreement, and a public development bank can foster this agreement, mobilize actors and stakeholders to say, you know what, we are threatening democracy in a very, very strong way. It's a next level now. So we need to reach an agreement, and we need to regulate this and control this. We cannot keep using this tool to destroy democracies, basically. So first step, reach an agreement, mobilize different actors, raise awareness, share like what we're doing now, share an experience, learn from the experience from other countries. Like that's why for me was super interesting the example of Brazil and Taiwan, because they are in opposite sides of the world, maybe somehow, but they found similar solutions. And it seems that in the Taiwan case, this is working. So we need to start reacting in a more collective way, and we need to take this more seriously.
Okay.
And this strongly, and with this I finish, the new alphabetization, data literacy. It's not just about learning how to use your smartphone or your tablet. It's about understand that your personal data is at risk, understand that many of the information going around on the network could be harmful. And this is data literacy. We need to close the digital divide. And that is a place where public development banks could play a role, and a very important role.
Okay, so if I understand clearly, you're placing a lot of weight on literacy, data literacy, capacity building, obviously, and literacy. You mean at all levels, meaning for stakeholders also. For instance, if let's say parliamentarians do not understand what AI is all about, and does not even understand what algorithms actually mean, how do they make effective tech policies, right? So investing in building stakeholders capacity on that is also very, very key. Financing, obviously, tech talents, the youth is also very key. And I like one point that you talked about, education. I feel it's also very important to boost education at all levels, not only at the tertiary level, but pre-tertiary levels, right? To really understand some of these, the growing trends in technologies and all those stuff. But the issue of this information still lies, right? So we still need to find regulation is key, education is key. But I think there's still a lot of work for us to do. And I think if participants, you have great ideas on that, you can drop on the chat. I feel civil societies can also play a very good role in the fight across disinformation, boosting transparency in at all levels, using obviously digital commons, right? That we know. There's a question on the question tab from Jesus Melendez, where he's actually keen on knowing good examples of digital and including obviously data governance, because you talked about data governance frameworks that have been used by government institutions and other relevant stakeholders with focus on developing solutions for inclusive, transparent, accountable, and obviously ensuring democratic digital governance, right? So if you have examples to share, I do have one. I just dropped it on the chat. I know the AU has been working on a data policy, right? The African Union just released a framework on a data policy framework that has been launched. I just put it on the chat that tries to handle some of these things that we talked about. And as Jorge pointed out, like notions around ChatGPT, obviously leveraging these large language models do leverage on data, right? And it's important to obviously have policies in place. So the AU data policy is one good example that we can have on the table. And I don't know if Wells Jorge probably might have one or two examples, like
About regulation.
Yeah, yes, good examples of data governance frameworks that have been used. I know the OECD Observatory has a page on frameworks that have been released, mostly AI strategies of different countries. So I actually am doing also a bit of publicity for my friends at the AI Observatory at OECD. So on their webpage, they do have a lot of frameworks from different countries that highlights on this. So Jesus, you can check this out, oec.ai for more.
This is a framework for regulation, or
Yes.
for regulation.
Yes.
Well, the examples I mentioned are the classic. Well, not sorry to use the word, but the one that I am more familiar with, which is the Digital Service Act, recently released from the European Union, the Digital Platforms Act, similar from the European Union, recently released. The GDPR from 2018, the Artificial Intelligence Act. All these concern the European Union. I know that the African Union is building its own AI policy. In particular, I know that Rwanda, Kenya, Tunisia, Egypt are working on their artificial intelligence regulatory framework, and kind of, I don't like to use the word, but United States, which is the place where big techs are based, and companies like Google or Facebook, they have a particular status that allows them to have zero responsibility on the content that is going on their platforms, which is not the case, for example, if you are a journal. I don't know, the New York Times is full responsible for the content that is in the journal. So Facebook or Google, they can put everything in their platforms. People can say everything, and they have zero responsibility. They are protected by law. And thinking about regulatory framework, recently the United States talked about their AI blueprint, the regular AI framework blueprint, which means they are thinking about a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence. This is a blueprint. We are going to do something. We have a machine, but this might happen, I don't know, in 10 years from now, or in 5 years from now. So it would be interesting to see more of these initiatives, especially in countries where you have companies using technology a lot or creating the technology, the case of ChatGPT-3. If we go to the other side of the world, in China, technology is used a lot for surveillance. I don't know if there is a regulatory framework for big companies like how is the chat that everybody in China uses? What, WeChat? No, I forgot it. Or Alibaba, for example, big tech companies in China. But beyond these examples, I think this should be a way, and different countries should start building their regulatory frameworks, and the countries that have already this going on should share knowledge, share experience, so this start to be global. We need this global agreement around this.
Yes, in this year, 2023, there are a lot of things happening in the area of regulations across across the continents. Obviously, the African Union just released the data policy, which is pretty also very good for democracy, obviously. The African Union, the United States, and talking about China, they are also actually working to reinforce how they call it, deepfake regulations, right? And also things around recommended substance and black box technologies, right? So this is one of also the areas that China is actually focusing on. Okay, so there are a lot of regulation initiatives across several continents, and this can also help improve democracy. I think there's a question on the chat. I'm just trying to pick up the question whilst I throw another. Before I let me see if I got the question pretty. Okay, good. So there's one from Cynthia Najaria. I hope I'm right. It says, thank you, Jorge. Great presentation. There are many third world countries deprived of all these technological advances. Do you have plans to include them in this fast transformation? So, I mean, so there's something I can pick. Working I know France is keen on, how do you call it? We are keen on on ensuring digital inclusion, bridging the gap, investing in emerging technologies for sustainable development, right? And obviously to boost transformation. And it's not just working on the technologies. It means that when we look at this, we need to finance, obviously, education as one key area, as Jorge talked about. There is also another key area which has to do with infrastructure, right? So we are also working with our partner organizations and countries to be able to finance initiatives around infrastructure, right? To be able to boost that. And education obviously comes with the building on talent, right? And also, we are also actually fostering and working with civil society to also boost dialogues, right? Because it's not all about technology that will enhance transformation or innovation in democracy, right? It also comes with dialogue, like Aristotle, right? And some of the great philosophies and thinkers talked about dialogue being one of the key ways in which we can move forward. So we also
discussion.
Exactly. So we are financing actually initiatives that also support human rights, obviously, but also boost civil participation, right? So these are ways in which we are also contributing, also opening these frameworks where we can have such dialogues, right, to spring up ideas and ideas to be able to see opportunities for investment that will lead to transformation in some of the third world countries that do have excellent minds, right, to be able to move forward. And Cynthia, also on this issue about the third world countries, for instance, there are countries like, let me see, RDC, if I'm not mistaken, that has cobalt, right? So cobalt is also very good. I mean, we use it for semiconductors. They have these raw materials that are essential in building what we call the AI compute, right? Building these tensor processing units, excellent for servers and all those stuff that we use to run some of these AI solutions and technological stuff, right? And some of these countries are actually left behind, right? So how do we bridge some of these gaps through dialogue and to be able to move forward? So these are a few things that we can talk about. There's a question from Vincent. Vincent says, thanks, Jorge. Gracias, Jorge. And thanks, Peter. Could you send us information on AFD programs involving startups, new tech, to foster transformation in developing countries? So we can drop in links. So at AFD or française finance, what we call Choose Africa and Digital Africa, we will be dropping it on the chat in a minute. So we have Choose Africa that we finance a lot of startups, Digital Africa, which is also very key. And also, obviously, at AI, at Emerging Technologies, we have also financed AI research in the area of biodiversity. We finance a couple of conferences and experimentations in the global south. So given that we have your contact, we will share some of these information to you after the presentation.
And I would like to take the opportunity, Cynthia, Jesus, Vincent, and many other, Usman, and please do not hesitate and reach out. We can contact in LinkedIn and keep the discussion. I think this is also one of my key take-home message. If we agree on this, we need to get together and share information and try to build a community around these ideas to spread and try to build the necessary behavioral change to take better considerations about the concerns of the use of emerging technologies, the impacts on democracy, the positive ones, and to take care about the negative ones too. So let's connect.
Great. And then there's a question from George Atim. Greetings. So there's a question from George Atim that says, great presentations. Any reflections on how we might build into emerging technologies and platforms standards of truth and evidence as one way to address misinformation? This is an excellent question that has a lot in it. So how do we deal with it? My first take on this is that, like, obviously, misinformation and disinformation, the issue about truth and ethics is a big issue, right? Ethics in Singapore might not be the same thing in Burkina Faso or in Ghana, right? So there've been a lot of standards on ethics, right? So there's also another issue that comes into play. But one way to build to handle this issue, this is just my thoughts, initial thoughts on your question on misinformation is, let's consider ChatGPT, right? So this ChatGPT is more like based on language models, right? Large corpus of language models that extract data online and through dialogues. And extracting data online might contain misinformation resources. So we scrap data. So they use it as trained data. So one way of handling, if you've tempted to play around with the ChatGPT by OpenAI, you will notice that most often than not, it gives a disclaimer and on when you use certain languages, right? And I think one of the things that they did is that, not I think, I know one of the things that they did was to find ways of making it a bit safer to handle this issue about misinformation and disinformation. I think there's still a lot of work to do, but how did they do it? So they outsourced, they had what we call people working on labeling these data, right? So we have humans as part of the technology, right? Because misinformation can come from the technology. Misinformation can also come on the use. Okay, so we have the design and also the use. So in terms of the design, they outsourced to people to label this particular data. And this outsourcing has its issues on ethical issues and also social issues, whether they were properly done, whether they were well paid, whether they were informed of the use of what they wanted to do, right? So they outsource these kind of data labeling to people probably in Kenya, India, and Uganda and other places to label this data. I know of a company called, I think, Summer, right? That did some kind of labeling and they were less paid, right? And such labeling of data is an attempt to reduce the misinformation and an attempt to also reduce biasness, racism, because when we are able to detect violent content, if you're able to detect misinformation in some of these content, it can, how do you call it, improve these algorithms in our interactions, right? So this is one way we can help in terms of design, right? Designing some of these algorithms. And in terms of the use of these algorithms, there's still a lot to be done. Jorge talked about education being one way, citizens actually participating in dialogue when we design such tools. I know in Kenya, we'll be ending very soon. I know in Kenya,
the results of the poll.
Yes, we'll talk about the results of the poll. So I know in Kenya, there was this issue about blockchain being used as part of the election, which raised a bit of concerns. The question is, how is the governance being done, right? Were people actually educated, right? Were people actually involved in the design and also educated about it? And this can lead to a lot of misinformation when we have election results and all those stuff. So this is my brief response to your question, Georgia team, and thanks a lot for the question. And I think there've been a lot of resources online, but we will jump to the pool.
We need to capture all those resources because people have shared a really good material. So
Yeah, I've seen a lot of resources.
We need to put this on a link list because people have shared really good material.
Jorge, on that, and all to our distinguished participants, this event is recorded, so you can rewatch it. You will have access to the chat, and after that, we will prepare a note that will be sent to all participants with obviously these resources and obviously the links to that. So we are going to a few minutes have the results of the poll that will be how do you call it, shared, right? If our experts on the background will let us see the results of the poll, and Julie is actually asking whether the PDF will be shared. Yes, we will share all this to you, right? So once you've registered, the PDF will be shared to you. So
with all the links.
Exactly.
Really rich material.
I've seen a lot of rich materials by participants online.
Participants on the audience. Thanks a lot for this. And what about the results of the poll?
Results of our poll. Our friends are actually behind the scene. They will just let us know.
And there is something I would like to share with you, just a little bit to finalize. Like thinking about the regulation. This is why at the end of the presentation I talk about. Let's imagine an hypothetical scenario in the future. Some of you have mentioned it. It's like we are always catching up. I think it was Jesus, and the regulation always come after. This is like a classic. The problem is that today technology is going so fast that regulation used to go too late. It's not just after as it used to happen, it's just too late. And that's why there is a contrast between, for example, the African scenario and what happened in Europe. Because the level of digitalization in Africa is yet in average less than 1/3 of the population in comparison to Europe or United States, where the level of digitalization is over 90%, 85%. This give the African continent some time to think about the future, and the future they will be receiving is kind of similar to our present. So think about the regulatory framework they need to build, and build this upon the experience of the North Hemisphere.
Okay, so thanks, Jorge. We will just announce the results of the poll. So far, on the first question, how do you rate the following statement? So the first question is, emerging technologies have highly contributed to social political polarization. We had 46% saying somehow I agree, and 36% saying strongly agree. So you do have close to 82% actually agreeing that technologies have actually contributed to social political polarization. And the second one says, second one is there a considerable decline in global democracy in the past 10 to 20 years? And we have about 64% saying I agree, right? So 64% actually agreeing to that. So Jorge, you just have 1 minute to wrap to conclude. Less than 30 seconds to wrap up, and then I will end up.
I take part of the 30 seconds. Jesus, you told that we need to use Garnet hype cycle curve more efficiently. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but please, let's connect. I will share a document with you. This Garnet hype cycle, you should take it very carefully. It's not that trustful as it seems.
Okay, so
to finalize, just thank you for your presence, because I saw you were many, more than 60, almost during the whole Tech Talk. And thanks a lot for your presence. Thanks a lot for your question. Thanks a lot for the links you have shared and your participation. come back in 2 weeks.
No,
It's
in a
going to
month.
be
In a month.
super
On
important.
the 16th.
On the
16th.
no, the 2 of February.
No, we've changed it. 16th January. 15th. 16th.
16th
Yes.
of February.
Yes.
And then in another one where we are going to talk about other related topics.
Good. So thanks, Jorge. On behalf of AFD, I'd like to thank all the participants who were able to join us. And I know you'll be rewatching these videos and also checking up the links. We'll be sending you information on that. I would like to thank our colleagues, technical colleagues behind the scene. So we have Delphine, Constance, and also Sylvie, all right, who have been very helpful behind the scenes. I would also like to thank Claire, who has been responding and also providing a lot of links behind the scenes. So thank you so much, and we look forward to having you in our next AFD Tech Talk, which will be on the 16th February at the same time. So we'll send you the links. You've already seen them, so that you can register and join the conversation. Thanks to you, and have a great day. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks Delphine, s'ils sont encore there. Merci beaucoup à Delphine,